All right, now that we've talked about proportions of the body and we've talked about looking at the body in three-quarter position, we've begun our discussion of moving the body and using the body to more interpret character. Today we want to talk a lot about um, how to use the body and how it communicates character, and therefore how we can use the physical nude body itself to help communicate the character before we even put clothing on it. So we're going to do some discussion of positioning the body using the center line, moving the body back and forth, using angle of body and using direction of body, and how that communicates to an audience and therefore can be used in the costume rendering for effect. First, we'd like to talk a little bit about Francois Delsarte. Francois Delsarte was a oratory trainer at the turn of the century. Francois Delsarte. French, obviously. In a period when there was no television or radio, people went to listen to other people orate or talk. And the art of talking and speaking was what we would consider the movies and the radio of today. So people were trained how to orate or talk to audiences. Francois Delsarte taught the oratory skills, but he also started discovering that the way people stood and they used their hands and their face communicated a lot of their character. So Delsarte taught a lot of body positioning in the early 20s and 30 movies. And so you'll see some of the movies in which they used Delsarte movements, and those were part of the communication of the character. And all of that came from Delsarte's studies, which he did, based a lot on looking at the Greek and Roman statues and figuring out how statues communicate in their frozen positions, some way of communicating bodies. Now, statuary is not unlike costume design because we're going to be using figures that are in a fixed stance and try to communicate characters through those stances. So we're going to look at some of the philosophies of Delsarte and some of the things that he taught about stance and about how the body communicates to its audience. One of the first things that we want to talk a little bit about is that Delsarte took the human body and divided it into thirds. He said that the top part of the body is imagination, philosophy, dreams, headstrong, and intelligence. A lot of that makes pretty good sense for us. The center body, the torso of the body, is emotional. It's the artistic area. It's the feminine region of the body. And it's the area of true conviction. Based on the idea that we might say that we believe something, but if we believe it in our head, someone could argue with us and argue us out of it. But if we believe something in our heart, it is true conviction. Then, from the waist down, which is the foundation of the body, is therefore strength. And foundation, as we said, it's the masculine region and it's the sexual region of the body. Now, to understand that a little bit, and remember that Delsarte didn't invent this, Delsarte only observed how we use our body to communicate. And therefore, if we lead with parts of our body or if we place our hands in certain positions within these regions, we communicate and we do talk using our hands. So for example, let me pretend that I'm your parent and you are coming in from a date and I asked you to be home at 11 o'clock and you show up at 1 o'clock in the morning, okay? Now, if you came in the house and started talking to me and I started to talk to you this way, you know that we're having an intellectual or conceptual discussion. And you know that you could probably argue your way out of it a little bit because I'm speaking in this range up here. However, if I move my hands into this area, I'm going to become more emotional. You're going to probably listen a lot more. You're not going to argue as much. And if I move my hands into this position, you know that I am giving you the final word and that you are not going to say a word while I'm telling you what I think. So that's easy enough in understanding, I think. we actually used those positions, and Delsart only was communicating the fact that he observed how people used those areas. Now, obviously, it might change from period to period, but even today, we still talk from those different areas, and those areas still communicate a little bit with us. So we'll use those a little bit in our discussion. I also want to just talk a little bit about direction on stage. Audiences look left to right because that's typically how we learn to read. So anything on the left has more inherent motion. You probably heard us discuss this when you took your TMA 101 class, and we talked about visual communication. That the left has inherent motion, that we physically, as a viewing audience, want to move things to the right because we consider that things at the right are finished because we've read across the line and we go back and we read across here and we look left to right. Therefore, if you place your figure, like this figure is, towards the left of your sheet of paper, then that character has movement still left. They can move to the right. So maybe your character has some more development to do. If you instead put your character on the opposite side of the page, then your character is more at rest and has come to a more stable place, you might say. Now, even if your character is in the middle of the page, or no matter where they are, if they are physically turned this direction, they're heading the right direction. So they're going with the flow or following the natural flow. If your character is turned this direction, then they are going against the flow. This might be a great direction just to face your body if you're a villain, or if you're a character who is fighting upstream or contrary to the nature of other people. You can also get effect in what we call cross-purposing. So my body might be turned this direction, but then I simply turn the face the other direction. So while there's a movement of my body, my head is going the other direction, which shows that maybe there's a conflict in my own direction, or a reconsideration, you might say, of my direction. So that we can use when we're drawing characters also. And we're going to be playing with some here and show you how that all works. Let's do some drawing here at this moment. So I'm going to just go to a blank piece of paper and play a little bit with the character. So if we draw in our head, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a half. Cut those all up, just like we know to do. So we're ready to draw a figure in there. Now, as soon as I start making my decisions, such as, okay, I'm going to draw my 3/4 this direction. That means my character's facing this way, going with the flow. If I were to change that around, as you well know, then I could go the other direction. And now my character is going contrary to the flow. So a little kind of a character that's fighting upstream, going another direction. So we can make that quick decision just in the head placement, we would say, character. I'm going to tend to go with the flow in this character when we start. So let's do that. And I'm going to then do my neck angle. You know these steps because we talked about doing 3/4 figures. And then I place my 3/4, and then it's time now for me to do my body. At this point now, I can start talking a little bit about whether my character leads with his chest, or his shoulder area, or his head region, which means that this is more of a headstrong character, right? Or one that uses the top part of the body the most. And so that meets the needs of this philosophical character, someone who's headstrong, someone who might even be intelligent. We might be doing that, okay? If they're leading with their chest or their heart region, then we're working with a character that is more emotional. Someone who has more true convictions, following what they feel about something. And if we lead the character with the lower part of the body, then it's a little more sexual, a little more masculine. So I could use this character and do the center line like that. That's going to move the whole body over the legs will end up coming down here a little bit more, right? And so our character's leaning forward. That's a totally different kind of character. Total different way of communicating, right? Okay. If, differently, we said if we're leading with our heart region, then that will place the legs down this region, going this direction. And our character's a little more vertical, you might say, but he's leading more with his heart region, as it were. And if, let me get rid of this one here. If I pull the line clear up this direction, then the character is leading with the lower portion of the body, leaning forward with the bottom part of the body, as it were. Okay, so I can use just the center front line to denote movement of the body and what part of the body the character is leading with. That will say a lot about the character all on its own. Now, because of that, we're talking about how our weight might change as we are repositioning our body. So let me show you another chart that's a Delsart chart in which he talks about the foot position. So this is his balance between the 2 feet, and then this is the position on those 2 feet. And you could do combinations of these. So first of all, just talking right here, a character can either be on both feet, evenly disposed, or he could stand with one foot in front of the other one and his weight on his front foot or on his back foot, as it were. So we can distribute weight, and a character who is on their back foot or on their front foot is a little more imbalanced than one that is standing on both feet firm, right? That says something right there about a character, whether they're balanced or a little off balanced. Then we can also talk about heel, middle, and ball. This is a good one for you. You might just stand up and try this. So if you are standing and you stand so that your weight is on the heel of your feet, it makes your body collapse into itself. And this is one that is, as it says on the chart, prostration or fatigue, or even can be suspense or anxiety if you're on your front foot but you're leaning back into your body. Okay? If everything's all on the middle feet and you're not leaning back, you're not leaning forward, then you're in the very center position. We see ease or vulgaries. Now, vulgar, in the vocabulary of someone from the turn of the century, which is where Francois Delsart was from, vulgar meant common, not vulgar as in something bad by any means. It just meant that's very common to be distributed on both feet and standing in the center of both. That's pretty common. Okay. By movement, one way or the other, you start switching one foot to the other foot or front to back and repositioning. You're getting different communications of different parts of how we communicate physically with our body, you might say. And then you'll notice down the line here on the far right that anytime we're on the ball of our foot, whether it's between both feet or a front foot or a back foot, it shows a lot of defiance, resentment, active movement of a character. So we're going to use some of this philosophy in determining, I'm just wondering, I hope I can delete this without losing the words. No, I can't. So I'm going to just back up a little bit and get rid of all my lines. Okay. I'm drawing right on my paper with my words, so I don't want to do that. Let's talk then about a character. So let's take a character such as, let's design Alice in Wonderland. She's quite a fun character. If I were to look at Alice on this chart, I would say that, okay, she tended to be a heel person, fatigued, respect, servitude, maybe suspense and anxiety, but I'm not even sure that defines her. Is she a middle person? Is she concentrated thinking, mental repose? Is she animated or exuberant? Perhaps a little bit. We might say, yes, this might be a little more common. Let's look at the ball characteristics. Is she defiant? Yes, absolutely. We would say defiant. Is she uncertain? Is there indecision? And there is some in some of the things that happens to her. And is she vital in this, or have an explosive response? Yes. So we might say there is some suspense. We would say that she tends to be a front foot person, and that she's sometimes on the ball or sometimes pulled back on that front foot. But then that means that maybe she's not always distributed well on her feet, that she tends to balance one way or the other. Okay? And that kind of makes sense, I think, as a character. So with that as our guide, I'm going to go back to our piece of paper, and we're going to turn this into Alice. Now, the first thing we'd have to ask ourselves is, would Alice be going left to right? I'm wondering if maybe we want to change this. Now that we've actually got a character that we're working with, I'm going to erase this because I'm going to suggest that Alice might be actually going the other direction, don't you think? Okay. So let's put Alice this direction. Lay in the neck, get that going. Center of her body. Does she tend to, we've already said now that she is, we kind of know how we're going to distribute her. Does she tend to lead with her head? Is she imaginative, dreaming? This, of course, story is all a dream, but headstrong, yes, that definitely does define her. Is she led with number 2, her emotions, her true convictions? I say yes too. So head and chest. Is there a lot on the masculine side, on strength, on sexuality? I don't think that's happening too much in Alice. So we would say probably that we're going to live between these two worlds. Don't you agree? For Alice. I'm going to go back to her picture. And so we're going to lead with her head and with her chest area, right in between the two of them. So I'm going to kind of do this and pull her back down like that. Okay, that's kind of a simple region for her. Female. Now she is younger, but she is still female. 1.5 heads for shoulders, pulled over to the 3/4 side. Chest is 1.25. Waist is 1, pulled over, and hips. Okay, this should look like a 3/4 figure and what we would normally be doing. So we'll do this, and we'll do this. And I'm going to leave that for a moment, and I'm going to come down here and lay in this and put the other one across. Okay, and drop this in just so I get the weight distribution. This is going to help us a little bit in the balance, because you can see that if she tends to be a forward person, she'd be more on this front leg on this side of the line of gravity rather than this side of the line. So if we say that she tends to be a front person, a front foot person, we could then say, okay, let's put her major weight on this foot, right like that. And we could even go further. We can't go too far because we have to follow the rule. We could do this and pull this all the way back as long as we stay on the heel. On the ankle, right? We could get to right where the ankle is there. Now she's a front foot person. But we might want to talk about her foundation, that she tends to maybe have a stronger foundation. Notice that if someone has their legs together, that's a very weak foundation of a person, isn't it? That kind of person could be pushed over quite a bit. And I'm not sure that's what Alice would look like. Instead, let's take the 1.5, swing the leg clear out, quite a ways out this way. And I've got to keep getting my length so I don't cheat myself. And let's have her stand on her toe like this. So we've made her a little more responsive forward as a character. Does that make sense? We pulled her back as far as we can on her stance here, so that she is she's moving this direction, but we do get a sense that her foundation is kind of going the other direction, pushing her forward as a character. Okay. Now, arms are the one that are most interesting to me. Let's talk about what we want to do with her arms as we go back now to the chart and talk about, we've already got her on the ball of her feet, so we're already moving this direction. And I think because it's we've got her on her front foot, don't we? We have her more down in this area physically. It looks like she's more on her front foot. And we could make that more defiant, notice, if we pulled her off and so she wasn't completely on her front foot. Let's just try that a little bit. Because right now she is ready to act. She's ready to move forward. That's suggesting that if we didn't do that, that if we actually pulled this leg forward just a little bit, so that she's really on the heel of that foot, while she might appear to be, has a strong foundation, she's a little more reserved. And you can kind of see that she's pulled back on her foot, even though her foot is back here. And maybe we need to not be quite as extreme on that foot. So let's pull this one back just a little bit, but still keep her kind of wide-footed. Okay? Can you see that she's less explosive now by moving her a little more central or more on the heel of her front foot? Make sense? Okay. So you can see how balance is making a major difference. And I'm going to change this just a little bit and give her a little more explosive response. But I'm not going to go clear to the ankle. I'm going to stay just on the heel of the foot. Okay, there's the heel. And I'm going to go ahead and put this foot back just a little bit more. Okay, so see how just position of the legs says something about her character in the Delsart technique. Let's look at her arms now, and let's decide what we want to be able to do. We want to give her, let's talk about some of this. Now that we've talked about leading her with her head and her heart region, what parts do we want to pull out? Do we see some philosophizing in this character? Do we feel that it's important that she's a little more headstrong in some of her decisions? Do we want her more emotional? And is she protective in those areas? Do you think she tends to either protect more what she thinks or more what she believes as a character? That's a really difficult one. Those are kind of questions you might even actually want to ask a director as you're working with them. Let's go back and make the decision that we think she's protecting her heart region, okay? That means I'm going to, when I draw her arm in here, I'm going to place her hand within that region, and I want it to cross her body, which therefore sort of protects it. I could reinforce that by having this one do exactly the same and go back to the same region. So she's really covering her heart region. I'm not sure that works really well totally for her. Let me get rid of that arm. Another great advantage of working on a computer, right? Just undo. What happens if we then let her philosophize a little bit? So now she does express her feelings and talk about what she wants to, what she thinks is important. You see how just those arm positions help talk a lot about the character. And it would make a difference on which of the arms we chose to use. So I'm going to get rid of both arms. What I've noticed is that the arm that's closest to the audience, which is this arm right here, tends to be a more obvious trait of the character. And this one is a little more subtle back here. So let's see if it would be better, maybe, if the fact that she is more protective is a little more subtle, and that her philosophy and what she believes should be a little more obvious as a character. Do we like that kind of character just a little bit better? Okay, that's another option. Or do we want her more vulnerable overall? Do we want to say, yes, she has heartfelt feelings, but she's not protecting herself as much, but she certainly wants to talk about what she thinks is important. So maybe this is our Alice. Let's decide this is the way we want to go. And do you see how just playing with the arms and the legs and working in the Delsart areas says a lot about this character? And if I can't make the character work in this sloppy scribble form, then I'm not going to make it look any better by putting clothes on it and doing lots of work to try to fix it up. Make sense? Let's get the figure the way we want it. Now that we've got all that, I'm going to move this up, duplicate the layer up, like we've done before. Going to get rid of the background layer. And therefore I can come up here, turn this down, opacity. So I can now add a layer on top. Sketch again. And now I'm ready to actually draw her as a character on here. So let's just kind of get her in here. She is a girl, but she's fairly young, so we're not going to do a lot in the breast area. Keep that fairly young looking. I'm not going to do that many muscles. Make this a little thinner. Okay. Keep it a little more kid-like. Another thing that we're going to think about when we start doing our finished sketches is, I've just kind of scribbled in the hands, but it would be smart for us to sort of really think about what shape her hands are also. Because she looks like she needs to eat a little bit more, doesn't she? Just a little thin there. Let me come back and fix that a little bit more. Because another thing that Delsart talked about was this is explosive, this is contrite, pull back, reserved, keeping inside. And I'm not sure that we want that Alice is like that. Alice might be more outward. When she talks, does she talk like this to people? Or does she talk like this to people? Exactly. Does that make sense to you? Okay. You can think about that just a little bit also. Now let's come back up here. I'm going to curve up instead of curving down on the face, which now turns my face up a little bit. Whichever angle I put, if I pull those curves down, then it looks like we're looking down on her face. Does that make sense? But I want to open her face up, and so I'm going to pull her face up like this, draw in her face like that. We might want to then consider if we give her, whoops, hair that goes down. Hair that goes down bridges the gap between the head and the heart and runs these two areas together. That could be a great way of saying she's being led by her head and her heart by marrying those two together. Don't you think you most often have seen Alice with her hair down? Now it makes sense to you why people have chosen to do that. Because if we instead put her hair up in a bun, back of her head, which we could get away with, or that looks kind of like an old lady, doesn't it? Yeah, just a little bit. We could even put them in pigtails on the sides of her head, keep her hair up. It divides the head and the heart, and then it means that the character can't usually talk between what she believes and what she thinks. And I really don't think that's Alice. I think that Alice works best if she can bridge these two areas together. So we're going to go back to this one and discover why she's probably been played this way most historically. Okay? There. Now we would start getting into talking about actually creating her costume, and we don't want to go completely there yet. We'll be going there later on as we start designing. But we've now created an Alice. We've got a communication of her in just the nude form that should help enhance her character. Okay, does that make sense? I'm going to just remove that page altogether and get us a new page and talk about a different character. Let's do Hamlet. No, let's do Juliet. Keep it feminine. We're going to do Juliet from the balcony scene in Romeo and Juliet. Here we're going to have a character that I think at this point in her life is going with the flow. She's listening to her parents. She hasn't decided to run off with this guy yet. She's talking about that, so she's contemplating it. So we'll play with that in a moment, but let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, there she is. So we're going to have her go left to right, right? So we're going to have her go, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. I'm going to have her go with the flow as a character. Okay. Do the neck thing, get her going this way. And now we're ready to start talking about what part of her body she's being led with in this part of the show. I don't remember if, okay. So we're probably not talking about a ball character. We're probably not talking about explosive response because we're up on the balcony. We're probably talking, we're not talking prostration or fatigue. We're talking a little bit servitude. She does respect her parents, so there's a little bit of this going on. Notice this is both feet. She's a little more evenly balanced. She's not as suspenseful and there's not a lot of anxiety here. There is maybe when he appears in the garden. That's going to happen a little bit. There's definitely uncertainty and indecision going on. So we're going to hit this center section of the sheet fairly hard. So she's on both feet and fairly evenly balanced. We do have to think about how strong her foundation is. She's maybe not as strong as Hamlet might be, but she's definitely not a weakling and has her feet together either. So we'll kind of do it in between. And let's kind of go with that right now as we work with her. We do also want to talk about what she's led with as it comes to the parts of her body. Now this was of course our discussion with Alice. And so we have to talk about what she's being led with here as character. I'm going to just do a new layer so we can draw over the top of this. So are we going to be talking about, is she an imagination, philosophy, dreams, headstrong, and intelligence? I'm not sure that's Juliet, right? Emotional, I think so, absolutely. She's definitely discussing feminine things, and she's discussing what she believes in her heart because of how she feels about this man. And I'm not sure, we might want to talk a little about this, that she maybe is in like with this guy, a little bit of lust, maybe not as much. So it looks to me like we're talking the second region, which should be an emphasis for this character. So I'm going to leave her with her heart. Okay, that's the character. And now with her center front lying in, I'm going to do the head and a half for her shoulders, mark her out, do head and a quarter for her chest, mark it out, the 1 head for her waist, and head and a half for her hips. Whoops. Okay. Time to decide foot. We've already decided we're going to plant her on both feet. We're going to have a little bit of foundation, but she's pretty even. Oops, I guess I better do these joints, hadn't I? Put those in. Okay. So we've talked about keeping her fairly, not a weakling by any means. She's on both feet, but she's fairly equally on both feet. Not going to worry too much about drawing these because we're probably going to be in a nightgown and we won't see her much of the feet anyway. Let's talk about her arm structure though. So we're going to go back and look at the chart one more time. And whoops, wrong chart. This one. And so we want to keep her emotional. want to keep her in this region, but we have to remember something. This is Shakespeare, and so there's lots of what for, who art thou, la la la, hark what light through window breaks. That's actually Hamlet is saying that. But I'm Hamlet, Romeo, wrong show. Got too many shows going on here. So we do know that we want to have her philosophizing, and is that the main hand that's doing that? Let's look and see. And that she is still protecting her heart. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm not sure I like that very much. Oops. Okay. Went back too far and took off her foot. Let's see what happens if we instead have her speaking a little bit about her heart, but being protective about it, and being somewhat hesitant, but talking a little bit from her head region as well. This is a lot more introverted. Notice her hands close to her body, pulls it in a little bit to her as a character. That's kind of nice. If we wanted to, we could suggest that she's more interested in this guy and has a little more sexual interest in it. I really kind of like the first one. So I'm drawing, I get to make the decision. So we're going to have her covering her heart. Okay? Another girl, not too old, so we don't do too much there. Kind of clean her up, get rid of some of the lines that we just don't need. See if she reads better as a character. Okay, so that's our Juliet. She's got awfully big shoulders. We'd have to come back and play with that and carve her down just a little bit. But again, this is only meant to be a guide for us to start talking about. Again, maybe when we add her hair now, that we talk about, she could have possibly up in a snood, which is part of the period, right? So it could be at the back of her head. But is there division between what she believes and what she feels? I think that part of what this scene is about is the fact that she has lost what she thinks she believes and now is thinking of something else. Her heart has been revealed, and so maybe we should have her hair coming down into this region. She's let it down for the night, and so we'll have some hair flowing down over her shoulders. So we will use the hair coming down. Anyway, she's kind of ugly without a face and everything else, but you get the basic idea of what we're trying to do in developing our characters and how we're using body positioning to communicate that using some of the Delsarte concepts. So hopefully this was helpful in figuring out characters just a little bit. Talking about the direction the body is flowing. We could, even at this point now, let's see, let me get some of this, talk about what does this do to Juliet if she is going with the flow, but then suddenly we turn her face and she is looking the other direction. So now we'll go back and put the flowing hair back in we had before. Let's see what we think of that. And you'll get the idea of what it's like when a character is in cross-purpose and her body's going one way, but she's looking back the other direction. And this is maybe good for this scene because she's trying to decide, do I follow my parents? Do I do what I want to do? So again, hopefully this helps in interpretation of character and using stance and some of the figure movement, placements, and using some of the Delsarte charts in influencing our discussion of characters and deciding designing the character in the nude so that we can really enhance that now with the costume. Hope you'll think about that. Hopefully you'll try some experiments and draw a few characters, get a feel for it. You'll see how the three-quarter figure now helps you a lot more in some of the positioning and movement that you'll need to be able to do.